Chapter 1. Tortuga, the pirate stronghold. The Caribbean sun died slow that evening, bleeding itself across the horizon. The light spilled into the harbor of Tortuga like a wound that would never close. Masts and rigging cut black silhouettes against a red sky, their sails torn and stained with salt. The smell of tar, rum, and sweat hung heavy in the humid air. To most men, Tortuga was a curse. To pirates, it was paradise. The harbor teemed with ships of every flag and none, sloops, brigs, and galleons, each carrying men who'd turned their backs on kings and crowns. No law ruled this island but the blade and the coin. As the sun sank below the sea, the island came alive. Lanterns flickered to life along crooked streets of mud and coral stone. The cries of dockworkers mixed with laughter, curses, and the distant tune of a fiddle. From every tavern came the same sounds: tankards slamming, boots stomping, and a dozen different tongues trading insults and bargains in equal measure. The largest of these dens was the Broken Mermaid, a two-story monstrosity that leaned like it might fall into the street. Its sign, a mermaid missing an arm, swung in the warm wind, creaking like a ghost. Inside, the air was thick with pipe smoke and sea stories. And I swear by me mother's grave, the sea herself turned black that night, one sailor shouted, slamming his mug down for emphasis. Across the table, a younger pirate scoffed. The sea don't turn black, you old drunk. The older man leaned close, his one good eye glinting. Not black from storm nor night, lad. Black from blood. An entire crew gone down screaming. The deep took him whole. The young man laughed, but looked away uneasily. Around them, the tavern roared with life. Serving girls weaved through the crowd, dodging hands and blades. A fiddler stood atop a barrel, sawing a tune that fought to be heard above the din. At the back of the room, a game of cards was underway. A pile of gold, a jeweled dagger, and what looked like a silver compass lay at the center of the table. "That compass ain't natural," muttered one of the gamblers, a scar running down his cheek. "Points true north no matter where you stand. Even in the Devil's Triangle, they say." His opponent smirked. "Then let's see if it points to your luck." The crowd jeered and cheered as the cards turned. Outside, the street throbbed with chaos. A fight had broken out between a pair of sailors, one French, one English, over the affections of a woman who was already gone. Steel flashed in the moonlight. The Frenchman's sword bit deep, and the Englishman fell face first into the mud. The victor laughed, wiped his blade, and vanished into the crowd. No one cared. Tortuga had seen worse before sunrise. Up the hill, away from the drunken clamor, the governor's mansion, long since stripped of any real governor, loomed over the harbor. Its white walls were stained with smoke, its gates rusted open. Inside, the true rulers of Tortuga met under the soft light of hanging lanterns. The air was thick with the smell of gunpowder, rum, and greed. Captain Darius Vane sat at the head of the long table, a map spread before him. He was tall and lean, with eyes sharp as cut glass and a silver tooth that glimmered when he smiled, which wasn't often. Around him sat captains from every corner of the sea. Red, the Scotsman with a scar splitting his beard. Isla Mero, a woman as quick with a blade as she was with her tongue. And Diego de Santos, a Spaniard turned traitor to his own crown. "The Estrella del Mar sails at dawn," Vane said, tracing the map with a gloved finger. "She leaves Cartagena bound for Havana. They say her hold is full of gold and relics from some ruin deep in the Yucatan." "Relics?" spat Red. "We risk our hides for trinkets." Vane leaned back, the lantern light catching the silver in his tooth. "Not trinkets. Treasures the church itself, once buried. Things they fear." Isla's brow arched. "Fear?" Vane smiled thinly. "The man who told me of this galleon swore he saw the Spaniards load a chest that no one dared touch. Priests stood guard while the sailors crossed themselves. Said the thing inside hummed like a voice beneath the earth." A silence fell. Even in Tortuga, where superstition ran wild as rum, that word, hummed, carried weight. Red crossed his arms. "You believe such tales?" "I believe in gold," Vane said simply. And if the priests fear what they found, all the better. Fear means value. Diego poured himself more rum, staring at the map. Damnation. Damnation's been in these waters long before we came, Islam muttered. We just learned to sail through it. Thunder rolled over the sea then, though the sky outside was still clear. Vane glanced toward the window, his eyes narrowing. Tomorrow at dawn, he said, rising. We sail. The man who brings me the chest earns a king's ransom. The captains nodded, though unease lingered like smoke in the air. Down at the docks, the sea whispered. A young boy, no older than 16, worked among the night crews, unloading casks from sloop. He paused, staring at the water. The tide moved strangely tonight, swirling, almost breathing. He thought he saw light beneath the surface, green and faint, like lanterns far below. He leaned closer. The glow pulsed once, twice, and then was gone. Boy, his captain barked. Quit gawking. Move that rum before I move you. The boy stumbled back to work, but the sea's voice lingered in his ears. Later, when the harbor quieted and the moon rose high, an old priest walked barefoot through the streets of Tortuga. His robes were tattered, his beard wild. Some said he had once served at a cathedral in Havana before he'd gone mad. Others said he'd seen something in the water that broke his mind. He clutched a wooden crucifix to his chest, muttering prayers in Spanish. The sea remembers, he whispered. The sea remembers what was taken. A pair of pirates laughed as he passed. Go back to your ghosts, Padre, one jeered. But the old man only looked at them with eyes like empty wells. You mock the sea, he said softly. It will mock you back when it opens its mouth. The pirates fell silent as he wandered into the dark. Out beyond the reef, the water rippled. A shape moved beneath the surface, vast and slow, gliding like shadow. Then, for an instant, the waves shimmered with a faint blue light, tracing the outline of something enormous before fading again. The night grew still. Even the gulls fell silent. In the Broken Mermaid, the revelry roared on. But amid the laughter and shouting, a hush fell near the back corner. A sailor had collapsed mid-song, his eyes wide and unseeing. His companions tried to rouse him, but the man didn't move. When they turned him over, his skin was pale, lips tinged with blue, as though he drowned. By God, someone whispered. He was fine a moment ago. A woman screamed, and panic rippled through the room. But before anyone could react, the man's body shuddered. His eyes rolled back, and from his mouth came a sound that wasn't human, a deep, echoing hum that rattled the bottles on the shelves. Lanterns flickered. The fiddler dropped his bow. Then just as suddenly the sound stopped. The man's body went limp. Captain Vane's quartermaster, a burly man named Briggs, happened to be there, and he crossed himself. The sea's mark, he muttered. He's heard its call. What call? A woman demanded. Briggs glanced toward the harbor through the window. The one that comes before the tide turns red. When dawn came, the storm broke. Rain lashed the island, turning streets into rivers of mud. Ships strained at their moorings, and lightning flashed across the sea. But through the chaos, Captain Vane's men loaded their ship, the Wraith. The old priest stood on the cliffs above, rain soaking his robes. He raised his arms to the sky and shouted over the storm. The sea remembers. The sea remembers what was lost. Below him, the waves churned. Far out beyond the reef, something vast and circular broke the surface. An ancient stone, half submerged, covered in glowing sigils that pulsed like a heartbeat. Then the sea swallowed it again. Tortuga returned to its madness, its taverns and sins and laughter, as though nothing had happened. But beneath its shores, in the dark heart of the Caribbean, something had awakened. Something older than any empire. Something that had waited for the world to forget. And now, the world had remembered.